Thank you, Angel, for that introduction. As Angel stated, today's webinar, we're going to be talking about eSuite reporting. If you attended last month's webinar, we did go over some eSuite general navigation and configuration. Today is going to be focusing on the reporting. This is not meant to be going over all the reporting available in eSuite. This is just meant to be a general overview of the reporting and the different configurations that you can do with the reporting inside of eSuite. There is a lot of flexibility and the ability to really customize your reports in eSuite and your criteria. So that's what we're going to primarily be focusing on. So to start with, I'm going to be starting in the eSuite Manage module. This is, if you were at the last webinar, this is the main module. This is where you're going to be having a lot of your financial operator details, your balancing. So generally tends to be the main module that is used and then navigating to the different ones from here. The reporting that I'm going to focus on is now under the term dimensions. So there is other reporting available. They are module specific. So since I'm under the manage module, I have the financials operator balancing reports. If I was under the buy module, I would have the receiving reports. If I was under care, I would have the more customer analytical reports. But the reports that tend to stay the same under all of them are the dimensions, which is your sales reports. So I'm going to focus on those during this webinar, but these will pertain to all the reporting, what I'm going to go over, so you can utilize these with all of those. To start with, there's some general configuration for the reporting. When you're in the main module, there is this little session icon in the top right corner. If you click on this, you can go into settings and you can do some configurations for the reports. So if I go into settings, you can see that I got a few selections here where I can look at the two main ones that we're looking at are your top pivot records and the top result records. What we see a lot is that most people, most stores have more than 10,000 items in their stores. So by default, this top results record is set to 10,000. You may want to go and bump this up. This is a general setting. This will actually apply if you're doing item maintenance, customer maintenance, and running any report. So you want to set this a little higher than the amount of items that you have in the store. The nice thing about this is that if you look directly below that, you have query timeouts underneath that. If you raise this, so if I go in and I raise this to 200,000 items, you notice that it automatically is going to update those query timeouts. Obviously, the more items I have in the store, the longer it may take to run these reports. So we'll automatically adjust those for you. So like I said, we do recommend you kind of go in here, and if you have 100,000, maybe go to 120,000 in here just to give yourself a little bit of a buffer when you're doing your reports. In this way, you're not going to ever run into an issue where at the bottom of the reports, it says that you may not have all the records. The pivot results records are if you are going to be taking your reporting information and using the pivots, which I'm going to show you when we get into it. You can basically take a report and pivot it, flip the information around. If you're familiar with Excel, it's something you can do in Excel. You can take a chart, kind of flip it on its side and reconfigure it. You can also bump this up as well. This will not affect your query timeout at the bottom because the report's already been run when you're going to pivot the information. So there's no need for the time to be raised. But if you want to have more results in there, you can go ahead and bump this up. If you think it's going to be something you're using by item a lot, you can bump this up to however many items you have. If it's something you're probably going to just be doing reports on sub-departments, you can keep it at whatever. I usually keep it about 2,000 because I don't usually use this with items. It gets a little too bulky, but you're welcome to do that. Saving this will now save it for all your reports, so you don't have to go and individually adjust it. So I'll also show you how to do that just in case. So I'm going to go into the reporting aspect now and show you some of the flexibility that eSuite's offering with the reporting. So like I said, I'm going to focus right here mostly on the dimensions, which is your sales reports. Oh, sorry, timed out on me. Sometimes it does that when I'm doing my webinar. I get it all prepped and it times out on me. So in the report dimensions, so under department, you can now go in and start looking at the different reports that are available. First off, you have the ones that you may be familiar with in SMS with the single total and multi-total. department multi-total, department single total, same with your sub-department categories. This will all stay the same. They've also added a compare total, which is nice. This is pretty standard throughout all the reports that you can actually compare two different numbers. So if you wanted to compare one lane to another lane or one date period to another date period, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to look at the single total for right now, just so we can kind of get an idea of all the different criteria that's now available in eSuite reporting. So the first thing is the period of time that you can run a report. They have changed this. So it used to be that we could only run reports by day, week, month, or year, and there was a handful that we could break down if we wanted to, instead of getting just those totals. All the reports in eSuite have the flexibility to go ahead and break them down. So if I wanted to run a week report, before I could just run and get a weekly total, but if you would like to break down that data to get the week by day, so you get each individual days totals as well as the week totals, that's an option. Same with month, you can break it down by day or by week. And by year, you can break it down by week or month. Gives you a lot more flexibility within your reporting. So now you can choose the report. And if you would like to see that breakdown, you can. Tied in with this is at the bottom down here, you have the breakdown by date and you have the breakdown by store. So if you are running one of these reports, so if you do come in here, you want to run the month by day, you want to break it down by date, you should select this so it breaks down by date. If you're in a multi-store environment and you want to get a reporting of all of the totals, as well as get each individual store's report with totals, you can go ahead and select by store. I'm just going to go ahead and choose month, and I'm going to choose last month's. It's also easy now, once you pick your period, you can use these arrows right here to go back and forth that adjust. You can adjust them individually here, and you can also do a calendar lookup as well. So there's a lot of different options to do that. Then you come down to the criteria. This is where it gets very specific towards each report, but there's more options now when you're running the reports with the criteria. Depending on what kind of report you're running is going to dictate what you have here. So I'm running a department single total, so I have to pick what the total is. So I can go ahead and by default, it's net sales. I can go ahead and use the search tool here if there's something else that I would like to go ahead and run this on. The search is right here. It'll search for the totalizer number or description, as we don't expect you to know the totalizer number, but if you wanted to run just on your coupons, your store coupons, your hash sales, whatever it may be, you can come easily find that in this list and run that report on here. Just going to keep it set to net sales for now. You can pick your target. If you are in a single store environment, RAL is all of the lanes, all of the data in the store, so everything is inclusive. You can come in here and you can do by individual lane. You can do by, if you have a grouping of self-checkouts and regular lanes, you can run by that. If you're in a multi-store environment, RAL would include all of your stores, and you could come down here and pick your individual stores if you would like. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this to RAL since I'm in an individual store environment. Then the other new thing that they've added is I'm doing a department single total. This will change if I'm doing sub-department categories, whatever it is that I may be running. You can select your department. So before, you would either run this on one individual department or you would run it on all of the departments. You leave this by defaultly to all. You'll run it on all of the departments. If you come in here, you can select a search tool and you can actually select your departments now. So you don't have to select just one department, and you don't have to select a range of sub-departments. You can actually go ahead and choose which ones that it is that you're looking for and which ones you would like to run this on. There's also more criteria. Down here, there is the ability to get a little bit more selection, and these all stack. So if you come down here, you can pick your department ID, and you can do your department ID stop and start. So you, instead of selecting individual departments, you can do a range. But you can also do, if you wanted to see a quantity higher or equal to, quantity lower or equal to see your top 10 departments based on based on quantity, if they sold 10 or higher, or if they sold 10 or lower, the dollar amount higher or lower than, weight higher or lower than. Then down here is your top X based on quantity or top X based on amount. It's a common question we get a lot is I want to see like my top 10 departments. I want to see my top 10 sub-departments. So now you can actually come and decide which top you would like to see. or which bottom ones you would like to see. There's also include departments with no movement. So if you want to see which departments are not moving at all, you can come in and do that. So if you can come in here, you select which ones you would like to see. They show up as criteria, and then you could go ahead and put the quantity that you would like to put in here to see that. So if I wanted to see my top 20 based on quantity and my top 20 based on amount, it's actually going to stack that criteria for me. So with this, there is a lot of flexibility. Also down here, I'm sorry, there's a check mark. I'll show only departments that have no movement if you'd like to do that. But there's a lot of flexibility that you can do with the criteria now. So you can get pretty complicated depending. If you would like to save this criteria, there is the ability to do that. This little box with the pencil in it will actually go ahead and you can save a new configuration. You can see I have a few saved here, and you can go ahead and give this a name. So this is my department top X, whatever you want to call it. And you can make this a public profile, which means that everybody who logs into eSuite in your system can use it. Private means that if it's not checked, it's a private. So that means only the user that's logged in. So my user number is logged in. I'm the only one that will see this configuration. You can also set it as your preferred default layout. So if every time I run this report, this is the layout I want to see. You can always change it, but if this is something you would like to have as your default layout, you can check mark it. You can make it public or private as well for the default. Then the next time you come in and run this report, you would just be able to select the same thing and just find your criteria, or if it's default, it'll defaultly open and you can easily run the report. If you start getting a little bit too complicated with all of the different selections inside of here, this little button right next to it will clear all the fields and bring you back to the default values. So everything gets cleared out. So I'm going to go ahead now and run the report. So I'm just, like I said, I'm going to run it on last month and show you the flexibility now that you have inside the reports. And again, I know I'm focusing on this one report, but this does pertain to all reporting in eSuite. So once you run the report, all of these columns are adjustable. You can come in here and you can move them. You can click and drag. So if I wanted to have my weight before my amount, you can just click and drag and hold it over, and you can adjust them as needed. You can make them smaller. If you don't want to have such a large description field, you can go ahead and click and make it a little bit more condensed. You can also add and remove columns. So you can actually really customize this to how you would like it to look. You can do a little drop down right here, and you can do this anywhere on here. They all have little drop downs, and you can go under columns, and it's going to show you all the columns that you can add to the report. This is going to differ from report to report, but for all of them, you have the ability to adjust this. So I can come down here and I said, I'm not really worried about my proportion. That's just not something I need to see on this report. I can go ahead and remove it. Or maybe I don't want to see the rank and I just want to see the ratio. You can come and decide to see that. I don't sell anything weighable. I don't need to see my weight sold. You can go ahead and get rid of that. If you're in a multi-store environment, maybe you want to see the store details. You can go ahead and add that in here. You can also, if you're doing this by date and you wanted to have more specific dates in here, I'm running it on a month, so it'll come up blank for right now. But if you're running this like month by day, you want to have each day listed in there, you can add that or subtract that out of there. The same thing again pertains to this as with the criteria. You could make this very unique report and you want to save this. You don't want to go through and redo the columns every time. That is now up here with this little gear icon. You can do general settings and you can save your layout. So again, it's the same exact idea with the criteria. I can make this, I can give it a name. I name them after myself a lot. And you can make this a public or private layout. So that means everybody can see it or just the user can see it. And you can also set it as the preferred default layout. Once you do that, so you can go ahead and save. I'm going to save it as private. You can then change the layout right here. So every time you run the report, you can come in here and change the layout. You can also save that under your report criteria under the wizard. So when you're here, this right here, this layout, you can go ahead and set this to it right here. So I know that I want to set it to my Jennifer layout. And this can also be saved when you save the configuration. And another nice thing about eSuite, nothing ever closes. So if I go back to the wizard, I want to double check something. If you click on this little 3-line icon. It does not close the report. I don't have to rerun it. It's still open. I can change the criteria and rerun it, but if I don't want to, it is still open right here, so I can easily go back in and out of the report if I need to. As you get a little bit more into the reporting, you'll see why that becomes a little bit more relevant. But for now, let me just finish focusing on this part with the other things that you can do with the columns. Another thing that you can do with the columns is, I did show you before, you can do the top X based on the top X quantity, based on quantity, the top X based on amount. If you don't want to do that and you want to be having the report run and have the flexibility to see both, you can sort all of these now. So if you come in, you can sort by quantity. So I can sort descending on quantity, and it will give me my top sellers on quantity by department. And I'm like, oh, well, actually, I want to see it by dollar amount because, quantity, that I could sell a lot of little things. So you can come over and do the same thing right here. You can sort descending by dollar amount and get your top sellers by dollar amount. You can have both within the same report. Up here, there is the options to, I showed you the saving the layout, but there's the options to go ahead and just print the report. There's also the ability to pivot the report. So this is that top results by pivot. If you're familiar with Excel, what you can do with the pivots is you can take the information and flip it. So if you're wanting to look at the same idea of this report right here, so I'm looking at my department sales, I can decide what values I'd like to look at. So I want to look at my quantity, I want to look at my amount. And then what would I like as my rows and what would I like as my columns? So if I come in here and I look at the rows, this pretty much looks like what we were looking at right here, right? I have my description and I have my amount. So maybe I want to flip it around and I want this to be my columns. I want it to go across the top so I can print it off in more of a chart format. And you can really get very creative with your reporting here. Depending on what you're looking for, depending on how you would like to view the information, you can very much design your own report. And again, with this, you have the ability right here, this little gear icon, to go ahead and save the layouts. So you can save the layout, so this way you don't have to recreate the pivot chart every time. Just makes it nice and simple. This, however, does not stay with the wizard criteria because you have to run the report, and then from the report, you run the pivot table. So you would select it right from here as a drop down. You also can print. So you can print this from right here, and you can also export it to Excel. Again, this is where it becomes nice because I did not close my report, so I can come back to it. So I still have my pivot open and my departments. You also have that ability right here, so I can print and I can export to Excel. When you export to Excel, there's a few options, and this is always a little confusing. When I export, it says only visible or all columns. Now that doesn't mean it's only going to show me the visible data. I only have a small subset of information here because I'm looking at department total. So I only have 12 departments, so everything's visible. But if I was running an item report, it would still export everything to Excel, even if I pick only visible. This is talking about the columns. So if you're looking at the drop down, when we're looking at all of these columns that are available for me to show in the report, if you're looking at only the information available for the report, the columns for this report, I'm sorry, you might want to show only visible as opposed to all of them, because it will give you all of these store details. It'll show you all of these departments, quantity, weight, all of these columns. It'll make it a very wide report when you export it. The other nice thing about exporting out to Excel is that it's now a clean export. So when you export it out to Excel, if you've ever done exports from Excel from SMS, they have page breaks in them. So if you do one from here, I'm just going to do only visible. And it's going to be like a download since I'm doing it from a website, and you save. If you have any sort of antivirus, you may have to come in and say keep. If you don't, it may not pop up like that, but it's kind of like a website, so you have to do that. And then when you open, you'll be able to see right here, one of my gotchas is it looks like nothing. When you scroll up, that's where all your data is. So you can see it's just a nice clean export. It's showing me exactly what I had on the screen, and it's showing it in a nice clean format. No extra page breaks, no extra lines. it's much easier to view this information. But that is a gotcha that I do like to always point out, that when you first export, the first time that you open the report, it always goes to the first blank line. So you always want to make sure that you scroll up, the data is there. Just, it goes right to that first blank line when you're opening it. Seems to be an Excel when you're opening an Excel thing. So just as a little gotcha. The other available right here going across is you can make charts. So if you'd like to see this information in a chart format, you can go ahead and click on chart. And you have a few options here where you can now view the information as a chart. So you can see a 3D bar chart, a 3D pie chart, or a linear chart of the sales. Just a different way to view the data. And you can come over here with all of these. So if you wanted to look at anything like your quantity, your weight, your amount sum, whatever information you'd like to see in a chart format, you're able to do that. There is no saving this. There's not really a lot of different variations with this. You're just picking what you would like to see as the values, but you can save this like as a PDF and you can print it. Okay. Going back to our reports, as you can see, I'm opening up more and I'm not closing them. And then going back here, there's also a pivot chart. So you can build a chart based off the pivot. Same idea where you're going to open up the pivot and you're going to go ahead and put your values up here that you would like to see, and go ahead and your rows and your labels and build it out so that you can see the different values that you would like to see in here. And I think I just don't have it quite big enough to go ahead and see that, but it'll be based off of that pivot, that same idea. The last thing is this little search icon. You can search within the reports now. So when you run a report, again, this is more of a pretty simple subset of information, but you can go ahead and search in any of these columns. So if you're looking for a specific item, when you're running an item report, anything like that, you can go ahead and use that search tool to search for anything in whatever column you would like. So it's looking at department, you can look for department description, group, whatever columns are available, you can search inside. The only gotcha with this that I always like to bring up is that it is not a wild card. You do have to put the asterisks if you would like to have a wild card. So if you'd like to find something that just includes this, you can, but it does need to have the asterisks around it to look for that. The other ability that is nice inside eSuite is the ability to drill down. So if you're looking at this report and you're interested in saying, well, I can see that I sold 39 items in my dairy department, but I would like to see what those items are. You can actually double click in there. Oh, I have this still open. Let me close that. Hold on, let me rerun this report. I think I got too much open up there. We'll just go ahead and rerun that. Sorry, but I apologize for that. I think I got a little bit too many criteria up there when I start opening everything up. So we'll go ahead and stick with our top selling dairy department. Double click on that and it's going to drill down. Since I went from departments, it's going into our sub-departments. Everything that I just went over applies to this as well. So all of the columns, you can come in and change the columns. You can change all of the sizes of the columns. You can move them around. You can save the criteria, print, pivot, all of that still stays the same. If you were wanting to sort this by ascending or descending, you're also able to do that as well. And you can say, well, I'd like to see what inside the juices. I sold 38 items. You can also drill down from here and get into the item information. So I sold the same item 38 times. So I get now look at that information. And there's more items that sold in the sub-department. You would have a larger list, and you can not have to go and run a different department, a different sub-department, and a different item report. You'll have it all right here, and the ability to flip back and forth. Like I said, nothing ever really closes in eSuite. You can easily go back and forth inside it. And if you are like, well, actually, I want to see what I sold in the cheese, you can easily come back and double click on the cheese sub-department and drill down into that. Another question that we get a lot was, what if you see something incorrect in a report? How would I be able to change that? Since it is still a report, you can't edit the information inside a report, but you can open up the tables to edit this. So down here, you have the edit and you can open up your table. So you can come in here if you see the price is incorrect, this sold at the incorrect price. If you see that the description has a typo in it, you can open up the POS table and go ahead and edit that. So you can go ahead, you can even pin this so that way if you have more than one item, you can go up and down and you can change the information. So it doesn't allow you to change a report per se, but it does allow you to edit the item very easily from a report now. There also, right here, is the ability to do an analysis. And this is, again, throughout all of them. So if you're going in to do an analysis, if you remember when we first went back with the criteria for this report, it had the ability to break it down by date or by store. If you did not check mark either of those at the time, you can come in and check mark them here. So if you said, you know what, I drilled down all the way into this information, I want to see this broken down by date because I did month by day, you can come back and select that right here without having to rerun the entire report, going back all the way to the wizard, drilling down to department, subdepartment, and items. You could just also run an item subtotal, an item report as well, but you don't have to go and re-put the criteria and you can select it here. If you would like to switch to the multi-total report, you can switch it here. Multi-totals will just show you all the totals instead of just the net sales. If you would like to look at the transaction details that include this item, you can go ahead and select this here. And you can also do some sub-queries on the items as well. I've drilled all the way down into the items, but again, everything I'm showing you pertains to the reporting. This isn't meant to be just on these reports. This is all the reporting in eSuite. So going back to like our sub-department, the analysis is right here. I can do all of those here as well. I can change by date, by store to multi-total. I can drill down to the item single total from here instead of double clicking and have all those selections. For the editing aspect, instead of by item, I can edit the sub-department now. So if you notice that the sub-department's name is wrong, maybe this sub-department isn't supposed to be in this department, you can easily come in and you can click on here and you can change that information. Again, you can't change the report, but you can come into the table and change the information. So that is really what I wanted to cover. Angel, was there any questions that came in?
Yeah, we had a few questions, Jen. So the first question is there a way I can do a multi-sort on a report? For example, by store and by quantity sold?
Yes. So, yep, when we're going through the sorting, right down here, there is a multi-sorting option. So if you wanted to do multiple sorts inside, so if I wanted to sort by, like you said, store, so it's a multi-store environment, you could turn on the multi-sorting and then you could do your sorts. So you could do multi-sorting is on, and then you can come into this column and sort ascending, and then choose your other column and sort, and it will sort within the first sort, if that makes sense. So if you sort by store first and turn on multi-sorting, then go and sort by amount or quantity, whichever one you're looking at, then it would drill down into that. So you want to pick your first one, and that is the first sort, and then it sorts within that sort. And then you just need to turn this off if you want it to get the overall back.
Thank you, Jen. Our second question is there an easy way to report on all traditional lanes, omitting the self-checkouts?
Yes, you can. If you have just traditional lanes and self-checkouts, we can create a target for the traditional lanes and for the self-checkout targets that you can run reports on. If you look, let me go back here. Sorry, if you look here, I actually have this set up, but we just would set up a new target for regular lanes only and just have all the regular lanes in that target. And generally we set up another one for the self-checkout target. So that way you would have the ability to sort both of these in here. So I click on here and you can see all my regular lanes in there. That's something that we can assist, or our help desk can assist on, or we can show you how to create your own new targets. You can have any number of targets.
Okay, and then we have another question. Are we still able to access all reports that we had from SMS?
Yes. So the way that we're doing eSuite is, there's actually two answers to that. The way that we're doing eSuite right now is it's layering on top of SMS and SMS Pro. It's a hybrid. So you still have everything available. SMS Pro will still be installed. If you don't want to go back to that, you can come down underneath the tools. There is a report search. So if you click on the report search, you can click on here and you can find the report and it will run the SMS Pro report. It will look exactly the same if it hasn't been converted over. So like a lot of them have, like the store multi-totals and all those have been converted over, but if there's some specific report you're looking for, you'd be able to search for it right here and it will pop up with the SMS Pro version of that and you can run it.
Thank you, Jen. I think that was our last question. So I want to let you guys know next month we'll be hosting our Lunch and Learn on Thursday, April 25th, and this will be an overview on frequent shopper and loyalty. Also, we have some Toshiba sponsored webinars. Our self-checkout monthly master series occurs on the first Thursday of each month, and the next one will be Thursday, April 4th. Toshiba will be going over self-checkout best practices. And at 2 p.m. today, we are doing the STCR Retail Innovation Showcase, and we'll have an expert from Lock SMS come in and go over some of their new innovations. So if you want to, come join us. Other than that, thank you for joining us today, and everyone have a great day.